this is a meta journal hours series number 4, and we are going to read and appraise a systematic review, and it is entitled as Methodological Quality of COVID-19 Clinical Research. Yeah, and if you have actually clicked the link to the journal, to the paper, it is published in a very, very high impact factor journal. Yeah, Q1 journal rank, that kind of thing. It's a Nature Communications. Okay, so we are very glad today to have Dr. Noor Azifa, CRU's MO, to share with us how she has thought about this paper and what are the things that we can learn from this systematic review. Okay, Azifa, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Chu. Thank you, Prof. Chu, and thank you also to Miss Iman for giving me this opportunity to conduct the fourth session of our MCH today. So this is the article of the day. This is the title is Methodological Quality of COVID-19 Clinical Research. It is one type of methodological systematic review. If you guys have shown, last week we just conducted our variety of type of systematic review, which has I think more than 100 of participants. Okay, before we start, we're going to use this CASP or Critical Appraisal Skills Program for systematic review. Unfortunately, for a methodological type of systematic review, there is no checklist yet until now. As an introduction, the COVID-19 pandemic began in early 2020 with major health consequences. And the severe acute respiratory syndrome pandemic spread globally with a substantial health and economic impact. And this is associated with an exponential increase in the scientific publication related to COVID-19 in order to rapidly elucidate the natural history and identify diagnostic and therapeutic tools. While a need to disseminate information to the medical community and general public was paramount, concern has been raised regarding the scientific rigor in the published report. Scientific rigor is a very big word, which means that the rigor means there's degree to which a research method are meticulously being carried out in order to recognize important influence occurring in the process of conducting research. And a poorly conducted study may originate from a failure of any of the 4 consecutive research stages, which the author identify. First, choice of research question relevant to patient care. Number 2, quality of research design. Number 3, adequacy of publication. And number 4, quality of research report. So what is the research question in this article? So basically, they want to know whether the COVID-19 study have a similar quality with the historical control or not. So did the review address a clearly focused question? For me, it is a yes lah. So what are the research objectives in this article? So the author undertook a systematic review to identify COVID-19 clinical literature and match them with a historical control to evaluate the methodological quality of COVID-19 using established quality tools and checklists, which are Newcastle Ottawa scale for case control and cohort study, Quadas 2 tool for diagnostic study. Number 3, Cochrane risk of bias for RCT. And the last one is a score derived by Murad et al. For case series studies. And the second objective is to evaluate methodological quality of COVID-19 study by a stratified median time to the acceptance, which is defined as the time between submission to the acceptance. Geographical region, which they stratify into continents, including Asian, Europe, and American, and the journal impact factor, which they use 2019 Insight Journal Citation Report. Journal impact factor is commonly used to provide a measure of a journal impact on the research community rather than the impact of an individual article lah. So basically, it's calculated using the number of citation in a journal received in the last 2 years divided by the total number of article of the journal published in the 2 preceding years. And the objective number 3 is to evaluate the comparison of COVID-19 methodological quality to the mesh control.
Sorry, Alifa. Can you explain a bit what is historical control?
Here is a mesh control, but basically they will use the historical control. I will explain further in the next few slides.
Okay. Can you on your video if you don't mind?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Can you see me, Prof?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we go to the methodology. The method is systematic review search, which was conducted on May 14, and it's registered at the Prospera on June 3rd. And it is reported according to preferred reporting item for systematic review and meta-analysis. So Prospera is basically an international database of prospecting registered systematic review in a health and a social care. So basically, if you want to do any systematic review, we should register at Prospera lah. And the data source here is created in the Medline by a medical librarian with expertise in systematic review, using a combination of key terms and index heading related to COVID-19. And the search was conducted in the Medline and also as well in the MBase. And search result, however, limited to the English only publication. And later, the result exported to the Covident and duplicates were eliminated using the platform of duplicate identification feature. And the duration of the paper extracted here is from January 2019 to the 16th July 2020. For you guys' information, from the timeline here, from the May 14, and then the paper being sent on 16 July. So it took just around 3 to 4 months only to do this kind of systematic review. The study selection for this review include all the case series, observational study, diagnostic study, as well as the RCT. And the exclusion is the exploratory or preclinical in nature, case report or case series, review methods or protocol, and other coronavirus variants such as the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. And the data extraction method is by the first and corresponding author name, date of publication, title of manuscript and journal of publication, journal impact factor, submission and acceptance dates, as well as other information such as study type, prospective or retrospective study, stats reporting, sample size calculation, method of SARS-CoV diagnosis, as well as ethic approval.
Azifa,
Yes.
would you show the search strategy later, or can you show it now if it's not?
The search strategy.
Yeah. It's actually available in supplementary
Yes.
material.
Oh, I didn't show it here.
I think, would you want to show that so that people get a good understanding what is search strategy?
You mean
I
the
think
key
it's in
terms,
the
right? You mean the key terms,
supplementary.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
The key terms, am I right?
Yes. And also the databases that they went into.
Oh, the database.
So I think they have it at the end of the paper, supplementary information.
I have the database, the Excel form, the keywords.
Meanwhile, I think has anyone actually seen the search strategy at the end of the paper? In the those of you who are here. And do you have any comment on that? And this is one very important component and aspect of a systematic review, that before we even try to apply the findings of the review, we want to see how they search for the articles. It's like the sampling in a primary study, how you sample the participants. So in systematic review, how they sample their papers or individual studies, then we have to look at their search strategy. Have you all seen the search strategy? Azifa, are you showing it?
Wait, Prof.
So nowadays, many papers are open access, so they do have many supplementary informations, So whenever we read a paper, remember to take a look at what had been attached to that paper. Yeah, it can be seen that many and many more information has been attached to the paper. I found it. Have you found it?
Is it here?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So right. All right. Okay. So you can see right the table here. So on top of the table, it actually states the database where they search uh, for the studies. And if you scroll down, you can see they show you all the search key terms. So the first one here is actually the search on Ovid. Second one, the search in Embase. Yeah. And the third one, is search in Cochrane Central. Yeah. So basically, they show these three, isn't it? If you go back to the first one, do you agree with all the key terms they use? And do you understand how they use it? Maybe you can enlarge a bit more so that it's clearer. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so if you are reading systematic review next time, you want to also take a look at the search strategy. Yeah, it's very, very important. And only when you agree that you want to spend more times into that paper lah, in the systematic review paper. If you don't agree, you might as well want to stop and just go away and throw this systematic review into the dustbin. Looking at this, if you can see, there are many ways of looking at the search strategy. Of course, obviously, the first one that you want to be agreeable to how they use to search according to their research review questions and objective. You know that this is about methodological quality of a COVID-19 paper, right? So you can see how they search for COVID-19. And the first you can see also, obviously, then they search for COVID-19 related paper. Would you all agree with how they search for it? You can see number one, number two. You may not understand the abbreviation, right? Because every databases have their unique abbreviation. But you can actually, you don't understand all the abbreviation. You can actually make out, you can get some good suggestion whether they did it correctly. Like number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then it's kind of a small conclusion on the number 7. Yeah. So 1 to 6 are keywords or key terms used by the investigator to look for or to distinguish papers on COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2. If you all can, you know, can say any other terms that has not been included here, then you have a very significant doubt that their search has been comprehensive. To me, I'm actually quite agreeable. I couldn't, find any fault that they could do better. What do you all think? What do you think, Azifa?
Um, based on the search strategy, I think the author did a very good job lah, Prof.
Okay. How good they did. I would agree that they have included almost every possible terms, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. If
Iman,
you
what do you think, Iman?
Hi, Prof. Chu and Dr. Azifa. I think I agree with Prof. Chu and Dr. Azifa in which that the authors have actually included comprehensive terms lah to search for these strategies. Because I don't really have any idea on what are the terms that should be included on top of whatever that authors included here. Do you have any opinion, Prof? I think they all have included all lah kot.
Yeah. Yeah, I also tend to agree. So if you have agreed to that, then the second would come in, as you can see on the first column. Number 8 is they limited to the years of publications. Number 9 they limit to English, and 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 are actually about, I think they want to exclude studies on animals. Okay, so there are significant search steps that when they combine all that, sections like 1 to 6 and sections 10 to 14, and then they come down to the last one, item 22. Yeah, so you have to follow each of the steps until you agree or disagree with them. Yeah, and sometimes if you are familiar with this database, you may be able to judge whether they have used a Boolean operator correctly or not. For very careless or uncareful search, you may actually found that they have used a Boolean operator wrongly. And sometimes that can be suggested from the numbers of the results. You can see if they include like 1 to 6, you can see the numbers increase until they got 30,000. Yeah, you can see that should suggest to you whether the Boolean operator has been used correctly or not. Okay, so this is on the COVID. If you move on, then you'll be on another database. Then check again. It has to be somewhat similar, but because it's different database, so sometimes the search strategy is slightly different. Yeah, but I can see it's very much similar, isn't it? Okay. Is there any? Yes, Azifa.
Prof, you want me to show the database as well? I mean the Excel form?
It's okay, it's okay. Once you got this, then the Excel file is their pro forma, that kind of thing. Their case record retrieval forms.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Is there any comments from the floor? Or any questions on the floor? Should I say on the BBAX? If it's not, then Azifan, you can then proceed.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Okay. Can you guys see my slide? Iman?
Not yet, Doktor.
Tak nampak
Belum.
Okay. Okay, next is the methodological quality assessment, which they assess for a different study design, they use a different tool. So for the case series, they use a score derived by Murad, which is they define a high quality case series score as a score more than 3.5. In a Murad et al, basically they have 8 question, but they only use 5 question for this case series. And then for a case control or cohort series, or cohort, they use a Newcastle Ottawa scale, which they define the good quality is 3 plus on the selection, 1 plus on the comparability, and 2 plus on the outcome and exposure domains. While for the diagnostic study and RCT, they use a Quadras 2 tools or Cochrane ROB. However, they did not specifically define how they measure the risk of the bias in these two tools. And then here, the review team here consists of trained staff with expertise in the systematic review and 1 trainee. Title and abstract were evaluated by the 2 independent reviewers using coevidence, and all the discrepancy were resolved by the consensus. An article that selected for full review were independently evaluated by a 2 reviewer for quality assessment using a standardized case report form. And then all the reviewers were trained with the original manuscript, which derived the tool or checklist along with the example for what were deemed as high score. And then when the 2 reviewers are not able to reach consensus, a 3rd reviewer, which is the principal investigator, will provide the insight in the process to resolve the conflicted score. And then this is basically how they identify the historical control or the match control from the COVID-19 article, which they use in a one-to-one fashion. They will find the same study design from the same journal to produce a control of the historical control, which basically they use basically they state here they will find a journal which is 20 months prior to the COVID-19 article publication on the publisher website, in the publisher website lah. So basically if they find the COVID-19 article on the April 2020, they will go going backwards to the April 2019 and proceeding forward or backward depending on the specific article. And if there is no comparison article found, the corresponding COVID-19 article will be excluded from the comparison analysis. And then following the identification of the historical control, the data extraction and quality assessment will be conducted on the identified article using the standardized case report by 2 independent reviewers, and conflict will be resolved by the consensus. Do you guys have any question on this historical control?
Yes, I have. Why is it fair if they couldn't find a control article? Is it fair for them to exclude the COVID-19 article? That's what they say, right? In the paper.
Yeah. Yes, that's what they say in the paper from.
I wonder how many COVID-19 articles that they have found, but then excluded because they couldn't
Find the historical
match
control.
control articles.
Yeah.
Is this reported in the paper? I don't seem to find that.
Yeah. It's not reported in the paper actually. But I think it should go by the result. It's I think around less than 100 being excluded when they cannot find the same study design for the control.
Okay.
But Prof, do you think it will affect the result if they able to find it?
If it's not many, then I don't think so. But if there are many, then I will be having a big question mark.
Iman, what do you think, Iman?
I think the author actually excluded those papers yang tak match tu because they want to do the comparison lah. But then macam Prof cakap, to actually exclude the papers in the quality punya like assessment is not fair lah if it is big papers or big researchers included. But then there is one part that I am not really understanding. What do they mean actually? First, they kata they can compare in terms of 12 months prior to the COVID-19 articles, but then it stated that they will do this proceeding forward or backward. So what does it really mean? Macam mana they actually capture the papers? Do you have any idea? Because I understood the part where they find a similar article 12 months before the COVID article punya papers, right? But then what does it mean by proceeding forward or backward? That part is not very clear lah. Even the authors themselves did not really explain in the papers.
That's not clear. But I can guess what I guess if it's correct is it means something like this. If you have some experience with the PubMed, right, you can actually see PubMed has the function of actually putting also below the paper that you have searched something like other papers that cited this paper, that kind of thing, or similar articles to this article. Yeah, so it's actually backward and forward. So I think the author was saying something like if they found a COVID-19 paper published on April 2020, so they try first to go backward 1 year to see for a similar design paper. If they couldn't find that, then they would look forward to up to April 2021, see whether there's a similar non-COVID-19 article. If that, by right, a good paper, they should describe it clearly. Cannot assume that, we read it and we can understand what they think. Yeah. Or maybe they have their limitation of words. They cannot be writing very, lengthily, I suppose. If this is understood, then this is the way. And to me, I think that seems fine. Within still 1 year. I think what they want is the period between this COVID-19 article is within almost similar period, not too far away, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I think Dr. Aidalina, do you want to give us some insight as well? Is it Dr. Aidalina here?
Can see the name, but not sure whether the same person that you think she is. Okay. Don't push so much.
Okay, it's okay. Okay. And then for the statistical analysis, I think they use quite a common statistical analysis where they do a descriptive and analytic part. So descriptive, they use For continuous variable, they reported as a mean or median, and categorical variable were reported as a proportion. And for the analytic part, the continuous variable will compare using student t-test or man-Whiteley u-test, and the categorical variable, including quality score, will compare by Fisher exact test or Kruskal-Wallis test. And they also do a post hoc comparison analysis between COVID-19 and a historical control article quality score were evaluated using a Kruskal-Wallis test. However, due to a sample size identified on the RCT, they were not included in the comparison analysis. Bear in mind that during this time, it is quite an early pandemic, so the RCT is not done much yet lah. And the finalist data set were collected on the Microsoft Excel, and all the statistical analysis were performed using a HSAAS v9.4, and then statistical significance was defined as a p-value less than 0.05. And then this diagram, basically I just want to show you guys how to choose a type of statistical analysis based on how many groups and type of variable. So if basically in our article we use kind of a lot of group, so we use more than 2 groups here, and then if based on the normality test, whether it's we can choose either parametric or a non-parametric test lah. You can see here. So the Kruskal-Wallis test basically for we use for a non-parametric. So if it is a parametric, we use a ANOVA. So the result of the study. So total COVID-19 manuscript they identify is around more than 14,000, almost 15,000. And after the duplicate removal, the amount left is around 9,800. And then after that, after the full article assessed for eligibility, the amount reduced further to 794. And here they do, after they do a discussion and their inter-rater study inclusion, the agreement will be around 96.7%, with the kappa value here is 0.81%. So usually in a systematic review, we always use the agreement analysis, which commonly used in medical is the kappa value lah. So kappa value, basically there is quite a standardized value which is reported. If it is more than 0.8, it is a very good, and if it's between 0.6 to 0.8, it is just a good one lah. So here the value is, the kappa is 0.81, so it's very good. And then further down, after they review all the article together again, the inter-rater study inclusion agreement left 86.5% with the kappa value reducing to 0.68%. So Prof, do you want to add more on the kappa here?
No, I think that's quite clear. Maybe you want to explain about the reason for the exclusions. I can understand wrong study design. They have stated in the method. I don't quite understand wrong patients, you know.
Yeah, but they don't really much explain on all this, the exclusion part, Prof.
I can understand all the other, but I cannot understand wrong patients. How did they define that as wrong patients?
Yeah.
And fortunately, there were not many papers, 11 out of 686. So it shouldn't be a big issue.
Okay, we come to the result of the characteristic of COVID-19 clinical literature until May 14. So basically the study design here, they divide it into study design, geographical region, type of article, and the method of SARS-CoV diagnostic. So for the study design, the most common study design is the case series, which account more than 50%, followed by cohort, case control, diagnostic, and the last one is RCT, where they only find 6 RCT being done. And the RCT, they will exclude doing analytical analysis due to a very little amount of RCT. And then by the geographical region, the highest is by the Asian, followed by the Europe and American. And then we go to the method of SARS-CoV diagnosis. They use a PCR, which is almost 80%. And you can see here from the total number of the article is 686. And then they found a mesh article only 538. So they excluded more than almost more than 100 basically.
150.
150 ya Prof. Ni 686. And then total is 539. So more than 100.
Almost 150, right?
Yeah, correct. Quite a lot lah.
Quite a number. Huh?
Yeah.
There's another striking point, if you can see at the geographical region. I mean, they may have a good match between many other variables, except the geographic region. Isn't it? You can see
Yeah.
COVID-19 one, there were like 70% COVID-19 articles, but they couldn't find a good match for that, in Asia and Oceania region for the article, for the non-COVID articles. You want to bear this in mind, I can understand because COVID-19 originated in China and in Asia region, right? So we could understood that many papers or report came out from here. But when they try to match it, I think they have difficulty in matching non-COVID articles of the study design in the same region, knowing that this region may not produce or publish as many compared to Europe, Americas. Yeah, and it may have been something like understood and taken for granted that papers coming from different area have different quality. Yeah, and it may come to the extent people have their discrimination. Looking at the Asian authors, they may say this is low quality paper. It's not always true, but behind that in mind, I'm not sure whether when they assess the quality, the methodological quality using the scales and the tools, I'm not sure whether reviewers were blinded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can assess a paper by blinding the papers. Hit the journal titles, hit the authors, all that. You just read the content. That's another very strict way of doing a review lah. I'm not sure whether the evidence say this is a better one, but maybe so. In certain review like this, when you have this kind of so-called discrimination to certain regions and ethics of the authors. Okay, but bear that in mind when you see the result. Yeah.
Okay, and then here you can see the I think at the bottom one, the impact factor and also time of acceptance. The impact factor for the median interquarter is 4.7 and the time for acceptance is 13. Compare with a mesh control here, mesh here 13 vs 110, which is comes out the p-value is less than 0.05.
This is in days, right?
Yeah, I think this is in days, 13 days and also 110 days. So it is a significant.
But why there's no result for the impact factor under the control column?
Yeah, but I'm not sure why there is no result here, but they do it stratification on the graph later on.
Okay.
Okay, next is the methodological quality score of different studies types stratified by the COVID-19 and historical control article. So here, the case series here, this is all the domain for the NOH, which is the case series here, the domain here is from the Murad et al. Where they actually the total score supposedly 8, but here they only use 5, but they didn't give the exact reason why they only use 5 things to decide to score the item. So here we can see here for the case series, the total here is 380 and the overall mean score is 3.3. And they use the mean score, basically they want more than 3.5 to say this is a good score lah. So then when they compare it with the historical control, the mean value is 4.3 and the p-value here is significant, which is less than 0.001. And then for the case control study, the total here is 8. So the mean score is 5.5. And for the COVID-19, when they do a mesh, is 5.4 and 6.6. So it is significant as well. And as well as for the cohort study. So from this value here, it shows that there is a significant difference between the methodological quality score for the COVID-19 study and the historical control study and historical control article. Do you want to add something here?
About what?
I don't know.
Yeah,
What do you think? There is a huge difference here. I mean, from the COVID-19 article and the historical controls.
I think a couple assumptions here is that you must believe the reviewers did a fair job lah. As I just now indicated, right? If the reviewer could be very, very fair, and I mean they were well trained to score the paper using the tools, the NOS or the Quadas or the Murad, all that. If you believe them did their job fairly, then this result is credible lah. And also you also want to whether believe in their fairness. But we know that everyone cannot run away being prejudiced sometimes in our life. I'm not so sure whether they mention about this, how they control for possible discrimination and prejudice. But again, if they use the right validated so-called methodological the quality scoring, by right it should be very objective lah. They cannot be saying something yes as not and not as yes, right? Because they have to score according to the skill. And because of that, I think the paper has a good value because they use something that validated quality skills to score the paper lah. In that sense, I think it may help a lot, like taking away biases in the reviewer when they score the paper lah. So
but
in that sense,
scoring system is kind of very subjective and it depends really on the person that who did the scoring, right?
That for this comment, then you need to understand the skills very well lah. I'm not very familiar with the skills they mentioned, but I know that the risk of bias Cochrane measure is very subjective. Although it's subjective, but then they did rely on the paper, whether they describe, like say, the randomization, the group allocations, whether it was concealed. If the paper clearly describes so, then the reviewer will judge it as so, yes. If the paper does not say so, but somehow, somewhere in the paper, they say something like it wasn't done, so they can say it's not. If it's not totally not mentioned, so they put a say unclear, uncertain, unknown. So you can see the color coding will appear as yellow lah.
Yeah.
So bear all this in mind as well lah. Yeah, I think the good point is that they use a validated skill and they train the reviewer, and the rest you'll be bear that in mind when you want to go away and using their result.
Okay, and then the next one is the diagnostic study where they put here on the study that have a low risk of bias. So basically when they compare between COVID-19 and historical control, it comes out as 0.02, which is still a significant here. But they didn't do but they didn't do any analytic for the RCT. So here you can see for the RCT they use a Cochrane tool of bias here. You can see all the domain here. The bias is almost is quite high lah, more than 50%. The next one is the COVID-19 clinical literature quality assessment. Well, here is the proportion and also the case series. They basically want to show how many what is the point for the each case series lah. So for the case series here, the point here highest is between 4. And then for the Newcastle Ottawa scale cohort is around 6 to 7. And then for case controls is the 6. And for the diagnostic study, 93.6% has a high risk of bias. And then for the time of acceptance, here they basically when stratified by time of acceptance here, which is 13 days, there is an increased time of acceptance with a higher case series score. So when the case series is higher, the time of acceptance is higher lah. So the same thing happened for the Newcastle Ottawa scale cohort. However, there is no difference in the time of acceptance in the case control score and no difference in time of acceptance in the diagnostic risk of bias of QUADAS. And then for the impact factor here, which they define
you want to ask the participant whether they can follow, they can understand the figures or not. Can you understand the figures? So the y-axis is the proportions of the papers, and the x-axis is the scores. It's the scores of that scale, right? And then the bar chart they divided into 2, times to acceptance or times of acceptance in days. So it seems like the figures A, the highest TOA, the longer of the times of acceptance seems to go in line with a better quality for the case series score, because you can see the higher the score, the blue chart, the blue bar is higher, isn't it? So when the case series score is lower, the orange bar become higher. So they later on they use some tests and they show to us that it's actually significantly different. Meaning to say, if the time of acceptance is longer, peer review process was undertaken better, so the duration is longer, right? So their review show this kind of evidence saying if it's too fast being published, then the quality tend to be lower lah. That's what it says. It also appears on the NOS, the cohort study also.
But
that's why
there's no difference in case control and diagnostic.
Okay, so it may be, I mean, then subjected to a lot of reviewer decision here. If they have this prejudice, let's say I have this prejudice, I publish so fast, quality must be low one. If I have that prejudice and I review all the papers, I may tend to, that kind of thing may influence my judgment. But whether they know one variable from the others, that's another thing lah. If they have not known the TOA before, they just by judging the quality using the validated skills, then that's better. And that I'm not sure whether it's clearly mentioned and reported in the paper, whether the reviewer know these variables together. And the TOA and the scoring, they did the scoring. Do they know or not the TOA for each of the paper? I suspect they may know because it is published on the website or on the paper, right? When submitted, when accepted, right? When published. So it may actually appear all at once, So bear that in mind as well. But I hope the reviewer will very fair lah. No point they want to be biased lah. Yeah. If, let's say for all of us, you're doing research, no point we want to fool ourselves, isn't it? What's the point of fooling ourselves and then fool others pula? Tipu diri, tipu orang pula. No point lah. So it used to be, many years ago, scientific research have good reputations because we are very honest people, and and all the papers actually were not subjected to very scrutinized all that because they think, this kind of rationale lah. Why you want to fool yourself and fool others that can do. So normal people, or normal people will not suspect normal people will do that lah. Yeah, but I'm not so sure whether our society is so normal nowadays. Whether the researchers are still normal or not. Okay.
Yeah. Wait, Prof, it doesn't move. Okay. And then next is for the low impact factor or high impact factor lah. So they define a high impact factor is more than 10, and if it is less than 10, it is a low impact factor. So the red side is the low impact factor, and the blue one is the high impact factor. So when stratified by the impact factor, high impact factor was associated with the higher case series score, and which is at the E here. And for the Newcastle, high impact factor was associated with a higher NOS cohort score. So if the scoring is the high, basically the impact factor will be high as well. However, there is no difference in the G and H for the case control and also for the quadras. It is almost similar result with the previous one, with the median TOA. You guys have any question? You guys able to comprehend this thing? Okay. And then when they certified by the geographical region, there is no difference in geographical region and the case series score observed, and geographical region was associated with the difference in the cohort score. So cohort score here, and here is the case control. There is no difference in the geographical region, and at the L, no different by the quadras 2 score. The difference here only at the J part here with the cohort study. Okay, for discussion, we'll go for the finding. The finding of this article is the COVID-19 clinical research was primarily observational in nature with a modest methodological quality score. And it is associated with a lower methodological quality score when published with a shorter time of publication and in a lower impact factor journal. And when it compared with a mesh cohort analysis, it showed that the methodological quality score has lower with a shorter time form submission to the acceptance. And then in the early stage of the COVID-19 pandemic, an urgent need for scientific data to inform a clinical, social, and economic decision lead to a shorter time to a publication. Because we're concerned that if there is a delay in the publication of COVID-19 article, may potentially delay dissemination of pertinent information against the pandemic. So that's why there's a few landmark trials such as recovery and ACTT trial has published the finding in the preprint server. However, importantly, the data obtained in this initial study should be revisited as stronger data emerge, as a lower quality study may fundamentally risk patient safety, resources allocation, and future scientific research. And then the author has list a few limitations of their study, which the first one, the review did not assess the impact on the study design and conduct of research, no result or conclusion in the identified report. And although the methodological quality scale and checklist used for the manuscript are commonly used, however, they can only assess the methodology without consideration for the causal language and are prone to the limitation. And other consideration of quality such as the sample size calculation, sex reporting or ethic approval are not considered in this quality score, as the quality score only reflect the patient selection, comparability, diagnostic reference standard and method to ascertain the outcome of the study. And then the ratio 1:1 for the historical control may affect the precision estimate for the finding. However, when they try to stimulate from 1:1 to 1.4 control, the result did not significantly alter the point estimate. And however, they postulate there would be an improvement in the quality of later study as the time goes. So let us go through our systematic review checklist. So did the author looks for the right type of paper? Iman, what do you think, Iman?
So I think this one is the one that Dr. Azifah showed before, in which that Dr. Azifah showed us the search strategies of the paper. So I think the authors have actually done a very comprehensive search in which that they outline their selection criteria. But then in terms of the exclusion criteria, one of the component where they stated that they exclude papers with wrong patient population. That more on that part, the authors did not really explain lah. But I think in terms of the paper selection, inclusion criteria of the papers, the authors have actually included a comprehensive search on the type of papers.
I agree with Iman.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you think all the important relevant study were included? Prof. Chu,
Yes,
do you
I
want to
think
add on here?
No additional from me. I think I agree with Iman.
So the number 3 one, Prof. Chu, do you think all the important relevant study were included?
Yes, I think to some extent they have included all the studies, and I think the numbers of potentially excluded study may not be so much to influence or to change their findings and their conclusions from the aspect of the numbers of study being included or excluded. But I'm not saying on the way they did it. Yeah.
And then number 4, did the review author do enough to assess quality of the included study? Anybody want to give an opinion on this? Iman, what do you think, Iman?
so. As the authors have mentioned on the tools that they use to assess the quality of the included studies, I think it is sufficient in terms of assessing the quality, but we don't really know in the terms of what are the kinds of components that they actually assess using those tools. Do you have any idea, Dr. Azifah? Do you actually seen or do some search on that tools? Because I am not really familiar with the tools that they are using in these studies.
Yeah, actually the tools is kind of the validated one, and the Cochrane actually also suggests to use that tool. However, we can say on the scale of how the author do the scoring effect.
Yes, because I think in the reviewers comment, because in the supplements also they are attaching the reviewer comments, because the purpose of the tools was not actually to intend to actually assess the quality in terms of whether they are high quality or low quality. So that's why one of the questions that the reviewers asked was whether it is appropriate to actually dichotomize the score in good quality and also bad quality.
Correct. And then if the result of the review has been combined, was it reasonable to do so? Prof. Chu, what is your take on this?
If you use the skills to assess individual paper, and then the dichotomization isn't supported by validation before, but once they use it to compare and they apply the same dichotomizations or the same measurements or scoring for the two groups, I think that's okay, because they just use the same approach to score the two papers in the two groups. So that's
basically
okay,
it's reasonable, Prof.
Yeah, it's okay because they apply the same scoring strategy or schema to the two groups of the papers. Yeah, if it's wrong here and it's wrong there lah, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So when they use it on one single paper, then it's not right lah, because it was mentioned somewhere like it's not supposed to be. There's no such cutoff. But when they compare the two, then it's okay because they applied it the same way.
Okay, so what are the overall result of the review? So from the result, basically we can find that from the methodological quality of COVID-19 is lower with the historical control. And then how precise are the results? Here we can't say much because this is not effectiveness study. This is a methodological systematic review. And can the result be applied to the local population? So this question also is not, we can't answer this thing, we can answer this type of question. And were all the important outcome considered? Yes, and are the benefit worth the harm and cost? So I think here, there is no harm of doing of systematic review here. But
Maybe you want to think from this way, you know. What do you all think? You want to, let's say, you know, the next disaster pandemic come along. You know, I heard someone somewhere, scientists say about COVID 2022. You know, we have COVID-19, right? Some say that COVID 22. Don't know what nonsense is that, but supposedly there is such a pandemic coming up again. Do you want people to publish it fast, to disseminate? You know, let's say it happens in Malaysia. Do you not think that the world wants to know what's happening in Malaysia? Let's say the COVID 2022. So now it's a judgment between how soon you want to get it published and how good quality of the paper should be. It seems like if you do it harshly and in a rush, so the quality of your reports tend to be lower. You tend to shortcut. You tend to say like undergone yourself. You read it in a less frequent. You write it in a more rush manner, so the report is not so clear. And I there's one always kind of a gray areas that is it not reported meanings not done. Say they assess based on the report on the paper. If the report miss out something they did, but then if you score them using the scale, then essentially you're scoring them as not done. But it's just that they may miss reporting it. They may did it, but they did not report it. And if you score with the scales, you then score them as not done. So that's always this gray or dark area lah. You're not sure even when the authors reported that as so, and whether they truly did it or so lah. So that's another area and issues of morality lah. You didn't do what, and then you reported as you do it. But I believe this is a lesser problem so far. Yeah. So the score and the scale and the measures of quality here is based on the paper. Yeah, they did not interview the authors or investigators. They just score the research as reported on the paper. Yeah, so that is the process of the measurement here. So between the speed of publication or speed of disseminations and quality of the report. I'm not talking about quality of the research, quality of the report. But in many of the scientific review is assumed quality of report equivalent to quality of study. But bear that in mind, it's not necessarily so, because someone may have conducted a very high quality research, but somehow they reported it poorly. Yeah, so it may be judged as poorly conducted research, but it could have been conducted in a high quality manner. But this is very minority lah. Yeah, if you could do your research so well, so comprehensive, so robustly, I'm sure it's also easier for you to report it in a comprehensive manner. Okay, but you want to think about this lah, and how to get a quick report and yet high quality report. Okay, so how that can happen? Yeah, and should this not able to be the case, then you want the readers, siapa-siapa yang baca tu, all the readers who read the paper know how to appraise it and apply the findings to themselves. And I think you mentioned in your slides that the author themselves noted that some, some media, public media, pick up from the preprint server of the early results which have not been peer reviewed and published. So they pick that and they wawakan, and they viral it, saying something about chloroquine effectiveness in COVID-19, that kind of thing. So that problem is the journalist or the person who viral the preprint one, they do not have a good competency to judge the clinical research and the evidence. But then on another slide, you also mentioned about because of initial so-called evidence about chloroquine or hydrochloroquine, some other part of the world they start registering their trials as how to they want to assess that specific drugs on the effectiveness on the COVID-19. Again, it shows that many scientists don't really like strict or competence in assessing the evidence before they decide that it's good enough to be pursued. People seems to be like rushing into it, like everyone to to get the Nobel Prize, that kind of thing. Like takut tak terjumpa ubat yang bagus for COVID-19. But in a sense, we want that to happen also. We are human beings in a pandemic, so you want some effective drug. So people rush to it. I mean, it's good, energetic enterprise in a sense, but we want the scientists to be able to to appraise for themselves every papers that come out, every research that's been reported, how good it is to be pursued. Macam tu lah. So there are actually many safety mechanisms could be in place to stop like so-called bad science being applied, translated into patient care and harms the patients. So there are some safety mechanism could be in place in between. Yeah, and we cannot blame just blame poor science or poor papers, isn't it? And those who blame, you should actually learn how to appraise a paper, and then you should judge for yourself whether this is believable or not. If it's not, then you don't do it until you wait for a good report to come out. So I think what we have seen in the past in this pandemic, the world is actually more inclined to share. Yeah, so more inclined to share first. I think that's I would actually agree that don't want to be ignorant, and then to be informed of wrong information. Provided I want to be more careful whenever I'm given informations like fake news, all that. You want to judge for yourself whether it's fake news or not. If you're not sure whether that piece of information is verified, is good, is valid, you don't share yeah, isn't it? And you go and verify and check it out until you are satisfied, then you share. I mean, this should be applicable and to apply to all major adults, isn't it? Okay, is that answering your questions?
I think it's more than it.
Okay, move on. I think
Okay.
we have the last slide.
Yeah, I have my last slide. For the summary, what we can learn today from this article, the early body of peer-reviewed COVID-19 literature was composed primarily of observational study that underwent shorter peer review evaluation and were associated with a lower methodological quality score than a comparable study. And then, so because of that issue, so COVID-19 clinical study should be revisited with the emergence of a stronger evidence. I think what Prof. Shu mentioned just now is kind of summarize of what we should do with COVID-19 literature after this. Prof. Shu, do you want to have some more words?
Thank you. I would like to hear our participants here who stay all the way until now. Do you have any comments on this paper in particular, or anything your experience with COVID-19 literature in the past? If you are a researcher or your academics or
Thank you very much, Dr. Azifa, Prof. Chu. Dr. Malina here.
Hi,
Mariam
Prof.
Osman? Are you
Yes.
Mariam Osman?
Yes.
Hi,
yes.
Prof.
Hi, long
I
time
was
no
a
see.
student.
Okay.
Yeah, congratulations for the discussion. Yeah, I am very much into it because since the pandemic, I think I'm the one lah who speak more, in the media related to all these
Yes.
published articles. Yeah.
Always heard and read about your comments in the news.
Yeah. And then for your information, I think the assessment and the evaluation of such articles through this, I think, quite concise and comprehensive review are very much helpful in order to help us, particularly when we are dealing with some of those issues that need some policy changes, at the national level. And what I did find, throughout this pandemic, we in Malaysia very much limited or restricted, to access our own data. Until I think when we have the new minister lah, when they revamp, all those, even though we requested, for the data since last year. And what I personally did regret is that I'm not sure whether there is or there are, the Ministry of Health personnel here, but I just want to share my personal opinion. I think we are, very much lacking, to publish our own data in most of the even our national level. I think if we have more awareness, related to all those data, there are many things that we can share as well as to learn, from whatever mistake that we have throughout the management of the pandemic. Perhaps, in future, our new generations, like you all, Dr. Azifah, and your colleagues as well, please put up motivation to to publish whatever you have, and then to encourage those in the Ministry of Health to change their mindset, not only to keep their data for their own, but then to share with us, not only in the universities but for the nation as well. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much. Congratulations for the team.
Okay,
Thank
you,
you, Prof.
Dr.
Malina. Thank you, Kim, for your good work speaking from the scientific basis to the public.
Most welcome, Prof.
Thank you. Okay, so we probably have a quick announcement about the next MGH. I did see a slide on that.
Yeah. Okay, for our next MGH is on 21st January 2022, which is next year lah. So we're gonna appraise on the non-communicable disease, risk factor and other health problem on the National Health and Morbidity Survey 2019. So I hope you guys will join us again and do a visit and follow us on the Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, I would like to say something about this. I think because this is the latest NHMS, right? I think most or everyone in Malaysia would know this, but then we are not actually quite critical about it so far, that we just take all the result coming out from this report, right? Bulat-bulat macam tu. But I think it's now worth a good appraisal, specifically on the methodology lah. I think next time, I think whenever we apply or we cite this report, we have a very good understanding how it came about and how the data was collected. So please look out for the poster on this MJH next series 5, and share with your friends and tell your friends to join us again, so that next time we are going to come across people cite this report again and again and again for the next 5 years. Yeah, and if you did follow the next one, I hope we also can do a very good appraisal. Then everyone got a very good understanding of what this report is about, And whenever next time you hear someone who cite this report, yeah, that's all from me.
Okay, thank you, Prof.